One of the most highly anticipated Broadway to West End transfers is finally opened in London. Of course, I'm talking about The Great Gatsby, the musical. It just opened a few days ago, and guess what? I was there to see it amongst the first audiences in London. And I'm here to spill the tea and tell you things that I liked and maybe didn't like about this musical. So let's dive in. If this is your first time on my channel, then welcome. My name is Christina, and I'm here to help you have the best London theatre experience. This is the channel where I share reviews, tips, and everything in between. So if you like the sound of it, make sure to subscribe. The Great Gatsby is a well-established story that a lot of people have heard of or have seen on the big screen and have opinions about. So seeing this musical is definitely going to polarize people depending on how close you are to this story and how much you love it and how much you pay attention to accuracy and details of it. But obviously this is a musical adaptation, so take it with a pinch of salt because certain things have been adapted. But broadly, it follows the exact same narrative from F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel of the same name, which was published in 1925. The story is set in 1922 New York, on Long Island to be more precise, when Nick Carraway moves there because he founds this cheap cottage that he can rent, and that cottage is owned by Jay Gatsby. And next to that cottage is amazing big property that Jay Gatsby owns, and this is where he famously hosts these big, lavish, extravagant parties that he does not attend. And these parties and fireworks, as well as this massive house, are all there to impress one person who lives just across, and that is Daisy, who is his love interest from before he went to war. And the situation is a bit complicated now because Daisy is married. But the best triangle here is that Nick, who moved into the cottage, is Daisy's cousin. So Jay Gatsby tries to get Nick to arrange a meeting with Daisy so the two of them can interact again, because their relationship didn't end for the lack of love between them, but because they were of different socio-economical background, and essentially Jay Gatsby was too poor to pursue the hand of Daisy. And it's really interesting when I read a little bit more about it. This is actually a replicating story from F. Scott Fitzgerald's life, who was madly in love with this girl before he went to war, and he was turned down by his father, who said that poor men shouldn't be aspiring to date or marry rich women. So this personal experience by F. Scott Fitzgerald has very much inspired this story because there are like a lot of parallels with his real life and what happens in the book. So besides this love story between Jay Gatsby and Daisy Buchanan that everyone remembers and talks about and is maybe the first association that you have when you think of The Great Gatsby, this is also very much a critique of the society of that time, of the rich and how they were treating people who were poor, and just big class differences in America at the time, and how the American dream sometimes seems a bit out of reach, and sometimes even when you get it, it does not provide you with the happiness that you thought it would. So there are so many different layers to this story, and no wonder that this has been adapted so many times into plays, into movies, into, well, now musicals as well. So there is a lot to unpack here. And one of the things that people love the most about this story is the era where it's set, because it is during Prohibition era. Just the fashion of that time and the music of that time is very fun. And this is something that you can really feel in this musical. There's a lot of excitement and a lot of focus on that love aspect of the story. So let's talk about the music. The Great Gatsby opens with my favorite number, which is called Roaring On. And I do think that this is the heartbeat of the show. It opens and it closes with this song, and it is the one that I left the theater singing. It is the one that I was most excited to hear. It's just one of those songs that kind of stays in your head. But I can't say that many other songs have stayed in my head after I've seen this musical. There are some amazing belters, and there are some really impactful songs that are delivered by incredible cast, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But personally, I don't think that this is one of those musicals that it will make me listen to the soundtrack over and over again, apart from Roaring On. Again, this is not to say that there aren't catchy tunes or that there aren't amazing, spectacular dances and points in the show, but maybe it's just that music is not as memorable as I expected it to be. And in particular, I sometimes felt a little bit let down by the lyrics, and maybe some of those like biggest songs that are exciting, I don't think they maybe delivered on that lyrical heaviness that Jay Gatsby and Daisy Buchanan are feeling. So as mentioned, the first act is very much upbeat and everything is happy and cheery and fun, and then it kind of ends with Daisy and Gatsby making out. And then the second act starts, and I actually, at the intermission, I was doing a little bit of filming of the theater, and I heard other people saying just like, this is a tragedy. I don't feel that there is that ominous moment in the show, that there is something that that we should be anticipating. And the thing is, the tragedy in the musical starts with the second act, but even with that, it doesn't feel like this is the main message they wanted the audiences to go with. I think it's more this like snapshot of the time and fun and parties, but this kind of like undertone of sadness is just there, but like more as a side note rather than like a key hook that, you know, audiences want to see, which I think it is a little bit maybe in clash with how heavy this piece actually is, because ultimately it ends with tragedy, with multiple people dying. But there are some other songs that were fun. So New Money, which is performed by Jordan, and definitely one of the most heartbreaking ones is One Way Road, which was performed by Myrtle. The Met, when Nick and Tom go to the place where Tom is making out with Myrtle, and basically it's from Nick's perspective, what is he meant to do in his whole dilemma, if he should be introducing Gatsby and Daisy. And then Only Tea is a super fun one between Nick and Gatsby while they are waiting for Daisy to arrive, and it's probably the most hilarious number in the show. But let's talk about something that I've already mentioned quite a few times, and that is the incredible cast, especially the leads. The role of Jay Gatsby is portrayed by Jamie Muscato, who you might know I've been talking about in the context of Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1912, because he was also nominated for an Olivier Award for this performance. And Jamie Muscato is honestly delivering another outstanding performance, which is totally award worthy. His voice is incredible. There were multiple moments throughout the show where the audience just started clapping after his numbers because he was so impeccably good. And as Gatsby, he's very emotional and kind of in tune with his love for Daisy. He doesn't really give across that maybe more player attitude that Leonardo DiCaprio delivered in the movie. So I think this is truly his own interpretation of Gatsby as a man in love and a man who's really willing to do so many different things for this woman that he's trying to pursue. I think partially this is because of the songs that are written for Gatsby. There are very much love songs for Daisy. I don't think that the music focuses on other qualities of Gatsby as a character. I think it's mainly that love and pursuit, and obviously there is that element of class, but I don't think that there is maybe an emphasis on it as much, apart from maybe when he is arguing with Tom. Frances Mayli McCann is playing the role of Daisy Buchanan, and her voice is again out of this world. She is singing some really high notes, belting multiple times throughout the show, and it is one of those show-stopping moments when you listen to someone who is so great at their craft. I think that both Jamie and Frances excel with their vocal ability, and some friends of mine that I was with said that these were maybe the best performances they've ever witnessed on stage. So I think that everyone was truly impressed by the leads, and Frances really delivers the role of Daisy with a lot of understanding for the privilege that she's part of and that she's willing to pursue at the cost of losing this love. But then also she's in her own turmoil and faced with this new understanding that basically Jay Gatsby is literally living across from her house, and there is a potential for them to run away and explore this love further. So it is a mix of different emotions that she's portraying, and the chemistry between these two characters is believable. However, maybe the tragedy between them is not as present, but I don't think that this is to do with maybe their choices as much as it is, as I mentioned, with the music and just the lens that this musical has been delivered with. Other notable performances are by Corbin Bleu, who is Nick Carraway. He opens the show, he's the narrator of the show, he's there multiple times just having a heart-to-heart conversation with the audience, and he does this job really well. Then Amber Davis is playing Jordan Baker. Her and Nick have a really good chemistry together, and they really seem like a couple that would get on, but they don't eventually. Rachel Tucker delivers the role of Myrtle Wilson impeccably. She is so convincing in her pain and desire to run away from the poverty, essentially, and she is finding this glimmer of hope in Tom, who is definitely not the best person to give your hopes to, and that doesn't end well for her. But for Rachel Tucker, she delivers one of the most impressive moments in the show and is definitely one of the most memorable characters. Another thing that I was really impressed by is the set design and costumes, and I think that this show without set design and costumes could really fall flat, because this is the show where that jazz age and prohibition era and that pleasure-seeking element of it really needs to come across, but also the sheer scale of Gatsby's mansion and the lavish lifestyles that they're living. And this has all been delivered with quite a few interesting ways to tackle it, because sometimes there were certain projections at the back, but they were really nicely blended in with the rest of the set that you wouldn't necessarily notice that they aren't full sets, but that they're actually projections. And the rest of the set had these like frames that were mainly like golden and green, and they were almost just the outlines of the set, and then the way that they would like move and collide and change. It's almost these like panels that are so intricately connected, but also when they're not, they just give like a bit of a frame to the stage. And then sometimes you would have these like stairs that would pop up and like a whole band on stage that is delivering these jazz tunes, and there was like the podium to dance. I think that in terms of the set, there was a lot of color, there was a lot of spark, there was a lot of visual identity to this show. And I think even if you look into the way that the branding is done on this program, you can really see the consistency between this and the set, because very much these are the colors. Gold is very prominent on stage, and kind of like it looks like a really shiny musical. And if you're a fan of those types of musicals, then you will really be impressed by the way that this is delivered. Given the era when this musical is set, there are lots of flapper dresses and tap dancing and just generally great dance moves, which you will be impressed by because the dancers in the show are also top-notch. So I think when it comes to visual identity of this show, the way that they deliver the set changes as well, it's all so smooth, especially because like London Coliseum is such a big stage and such a big theater. It kind of really felt like you are transported into this world of Gatsby, and to a degree it does feel like this is how Gatsby would do it in terms of those parties and the whole feel of the show. So where do I stand in regards to this musical? I think that it's a great night at the theater. I really enjoyed it. I'm not a person who's particularly close to The Great Gatsby as a novel, so I really didn't mind the way that they kind of interpreted it. However, there is definitely that big difference in terms of this being predominantly a very happy show with a tragic ending, rather than this story that has this undertone of tragedy looming and about to happen. And this will really depend on your personal preference in terms of which story and type of the narrative you would prefer. I think this is definitely a show worth seeing, with amazing leads, with great dancing, choreography, sets, so plenty to be impressed by. And if you like this story and you like this era in America, then there's no better show to check out. If you're interested to book the tickets, you can do that until 7th of September, which is when the show closes, and tickets go for as low as £20. Bear in mind that London Coliseum is a really big theater, so I do think that if you go all the way to the balcony, you might struggle a little bit to see properly and everything will be so small. I was sitting in the upper circle and we paid tickets about £40, and honestly these were like pretty decent seats, so I would highly recommend it. If you're interested in checking out the best shows in London according to my opinion, then check out this video where I'm talking about my favorite shows from last year, which you can still see in 2025.